And welcome back to Music Free Static. I hope you're having a fabulous day. OpenAI recently rolled out Sora, or at least their newest Sora models, which make it easier to generate video based off of all sorts of random garbage. Okay. And I've seen a few of the things that it's been spitting out. It is definitely high on the AI slop meter. Okay. But I got thinking about this, especially in relations to an interview I heard with Alexis Ohanian, I believe how it's pronounced. He was talking with TBPN, and he had an interesting focus on it. Well, I guess he was investing in live sports. He was really pushing live sports, women's sports in particular, but um, live sports in general. And as he was talking with the crew there at TBPN, I got thinking about live sports and about this AI nonsense. That's part of what Alexis was talking about as well. With the idea that with all of the AI, right, the AI slop, right, all of that nonsense, we've got movies that are, so many of them are just CGI slugfests. Okay, I don't mean to take digs at Marvel or DC or Star Wars because I really like them, but the more of those you watch, the more fake it feels sometimes. Okay, which, okay, to be fair, it's a movie. It's supposed to feel more than real. Maybe is at best it's supposed to be more than real. But I think there's a growing feeling that a lot of this a lot of this stuff that's growing up, especially with the AI, um, you know, just nonsense that's coming out. But with what we're seeing coming out of with a lot of the movies, is that people are feeling like, you know what, I want something that I know is real, right? Something that I know is not all this edited nonsense. Okay, so I've wondered if maybe because of that, we're starting to see a resurgence in live entertainment. Okay. Now, I'll tell you, one of the things I loved most about cutting the cord and going to streaming, first with Netflix and then um, Disney Plus and things like that, is I didn't have to worry about live. I didn't care about live, right? When I was still watching the Denver Broncos, watching the football games, I recorded those games on Sunday, and then I watched them Saturday morning, or Saturday morning. Watched them Monday morning. The next morning. Partly because I didn't want to watch them on Sunday, because it's the Sabbath and I wanted to spend the time with my family and all of that good stuff. But also, I really got used to, hey, let me just fast forward through these commercials because I don't need to see 2.5 minutes of beer and car ads, every time there's a pause in the action, right? And yeah, I could get through a game in an hour. It was great, right? But I think there really is a push to for people who are, I don't know, said wanting that live action, that stuff that can't be faked. Maybe is a better way of looking at it, right? So sports, for example, sports has never been more popular in the United States. The NFL is still going mad. It's, well, just in general, but no, viewership is through the roof. The NBA has been taking off. Baseball exists, and I think hockey is getting more popular as well. Not to mention the growth of sports in the U.S. of like soccer, which of course is huge worldwide, but is seeing growth here in the U.S. There is some signs that live theater has been growing. Now, that's a little shaky. Okay, um, the numbers are still lower than they had been. Uh, I was trying to dig through and find a good answer here because I'd heard, oh yeah, more people are going to theaters. But the anecdotes, and remember the plural of anecdote is not data, right? The anecdotes is that theater is dying. But Broadway shows are skyrocketing. And it's so, hey, is this a case where theater as a whole may be sort of shaky unless you're on Broadway, in which case everything is coming up roses for you? That I don't know. Okay. I tried finding some good data. I could not, but there are signs that, hey, people are going to Broadway shows more often than they ever have. Live music has been breaking revenue records. Okay. One stat I found said that they were, I think it was 2004, live music brought in $9.5 billion worldwide. Now, maybe that's all Taylor Swift. Okay. She had her Eras tour, and she is, in fact, the largest, most popular singer in history, quite possibly. Okay. But we're also seeing a lot of, I think that we're really seeing a growth of live music. People going to see Swift, or seeing Lindsey Sterling, or seeing whatever your favorite band is, right? Now, part of the reason that number is so big may be due to rising ticket prices. Okay, that's always part of the equation. But what can't be denied is more people are going to see live bands than they have in the past. Podcasts have also been taking off. Okay, now, admittedly, this is a podcast, but and I want you to listen to my podcast, and I'm hoping that more people are listening to podcasts, right? No, but the reality is, ever since COVID, podcasts have really been taking off. Okay, and part of this, right? They'd been a thing before that, right? Trust me, I know. I was podcasting back in 2008. I stopped all of my podcasts in 2015 before, when I got into streaming and stuff, and then said, you know what? I'm done with all of that. I needed to cut ties with, I was doing a political podcast at the time. I had to stop doing that for my mental health, but all of the other stuff, I needed to stop. But, I got back into it for other reasons I've talked about in the past. But when COVID hit, people who'd been listening to podcasts just when they were working out or something realized that they could listen to podcasts anytime, right? I tend to listen to them when I walk. So I walk to work. And so it's nice to put on a podcast for those 15 minutes that it takes me to walk from my house to my office, right? I do that round trip a couple of times a day. Yeah, it's kind of nice. And I'll listen to podcasts about Star Wars or movie news. I listen to podcasts about politics and news and stuff too. It's really, really cool, right? Now, some of you might be old enough to remember talk radio. Okay, I'm not saying you had to have liked talk radio, but you remember when it existed? Okay, technically it still does. But I remember, going places with my dad some days, and he'd have talk radio on, and for my dad, it was more often than not, it was politics. It was Rush Limbaugh and stuff like that. Talk radio has become podcasts, right? You think about what those radio shows were. It was 3 hours, with ads, of course, but it was basically 3 hours of this one person talking about whatever it was they were talking about. Again, talk radio was almost exclusively politics, but you also had it for sports and other things, right? Well, now it's all podcasts. You've got Joe Rogan out there, and you've got, right? He does this. Was it a 2 or 3 hour show? I've never watched Rogan. I don't know, but I understand his podcasts are long, right? But you also get live streams that are basically that same thing. It's just, rather than being on AM radio, or I guess some of it moved to FM radio, but rather than being on the radio, now it's streamed or you download it, but it's still more or less a live performance. Okay. Yes, there are some podcasts. I've listened to a few that are sort of history focused. And yes, it's more of a produced story, right? It's like they walk you through the history of something. Okay. Actually, I heard about a really interesting podcast on the history of air conditioning. Okay. Yeah, no. It sounds like it would be a really boring topic. It's actually fascinating. It's one of those inventions that changed the world, and we don't really think about it. But anyway, the growth in all of these types of things where it's more of a focus on an immediate performance. Okay. So we were talking about sports, you're talking about podcasts, right? It's, what are they talking about right now? What's happening on the field? You're going to a live show. It's not auto-tuned. It's not, necessarily hyper produced in the way you might get on an album. It's the performer doing their thing, right? So, yes, Taylor Swift shows are obviously big productions, right? I watched her Eras tour video on Disney Plus. It was great. And you go watch. I bring up Lindsey Sterling because she's about the only other musician I kind of follow more than just passingly. And yeah, her shows are high flying spectacles as well, as she's hanging upside down and playing the violin. Okay, that's something that it's beyond what you can get off the album, right? So, why? Right? Because all of this is, I think, and again, I'm not, this is just my take, but looking at some of the growth of these different sports, and then said it got me thinking, said the interview with Ohanian earlier that I mentioned was, people are trying to check out of the whole AI slop world, but also that hyper-produced CGI world, and get back in touch with live performances. Now, given my particular interests, what does this mean for like live streaming? So things like Twitch, right? Now, some of that, we're talking about podcast stuff, is definitely happening on Twitch. You've got some, there are definitely some people who are doing political type talk shows on Twitch or on Rumble or on YouTube, right? Those are definitely a thing. Those streams are happening. But what about gaming streams? Okay. Now, Twitch's overall numbers are down. Okay. You can go to places like Twitch Tracker, Sully Gnome, and you can see overall Twitch viewership is on a decline. It hasn't like fallen off a cliff unless you're in speak certain languages, but generally it's kind of on a decline. Now, the question is that because of Twitch, right? Because of some of Twitch policies? There's definitely some of that. Like Twitch has, well, here, let me get to the next point, and then we'll get back to because of Twitch, right? The other thing Twitch is facing is competition for the first time in a while, right? You've got Kick, who's actually been growing, okay? Now, Kick has its issues, and I am definitely not blind to them. I do stream on Kick, okay? Full disclosure, but in addition to Twitch and YouTube, because multi-streaming is fun. But Kick actually saw some growth. Now, they're backing it with money from the stake gambling website, okay, but they're doing some things that are really putting pressure on Kick. YouTube occasionally remembers that they have a streaming platform and pushes out features to it that make it very compelling. It's one of the reasons, it was a couple of years ago, I left Twitch to go back streaming at the time exclusively on YouTube, and now I'm back to multi-streaming. But it's that because of Twitch thing that pushed me back to YouTube. So back when I was getting off of Twitch, I said it was a couple of years ago. Twitch was at a point where they were burning cash, and there was really a push from Amazon, I think, to become profitable, or at least quit burning cash so fast. And they were starting to make changes that were really intrusive, I think. That made it harder for a viewer to enjoy live content on Twitch. Now, advertising is definitely a thing. The problem is, when you're dealing with live content, how do you do ads, right? Now, we talked about the NFL earlier, right? The NFL has built-in stopping points, okay? Makes it a little annoying to watch a game live, but if you're watching it on TV, it's also annoying. But at least the action itself is not stopped, okay? Or you're not missing anything because of an ad. With soccer or hockey, those few times I've watched those, I don't have live TV, so I don't watch a lot of sports, and I have other things to do with my time. But a lot of times they'll slide into a picture-in-picture type thing or something, so you can still see the action. They can still make ad money, right? And I seem to recall they did something similar with that with the Olympics. There were options. Well, Twitch is now starting to do that, but I said a couple of years ago, and even now, ads are still interruptive. It pops up with whatever the streamer has configured. That's the myth. Twitch doesn't force ads unless there are some other things, but very special cases does Twitch force ads. But for most streamers, it's the streamer who determines how often ads run. Okay. The one place Twitch does push ads if a streamer doesn't have ads on is pre-rolls. It'll show you an ad before you get to the stream. Okay. But then you watch the stream uninterrupted or something like that. Okay. Awesome. But they were making lots of changes that were really pushing for those interruptive types of ads, and it's hard for a viewer sometimes to really, what do you do about it? Okay. Well, Kick comes around. They don't have ads. They offer bigger payouts. And because so much of what Twitch was pushing was ad revenue based, they had a problem. Okay. So what you end up having happen here is in certain areas of the world, advertising revenue just isn't there. Right? There are not advertisers who are trying to advertise on Twitch. Okay. They're just not there. I was watching, Zach Bussey had a video up a couple of, a week or so ago, obviously longer once this video goes up, but certain languages, there just isn't ad revenue. So with Twitch offering for most streamers a 50-50 payout, if somebody subscribes to your channel, Twitch takes half, streamer gets half, right? Maybe if you get up to partner levels, you can get it to like a 70-30 payout. I think they also have a mid 60-40, but still not great terms. YouTube has a 70-30 payout, and Kick has a 95% payout. Okay, it's insane. Again, Kick is subsidized by all those sweet gambling funds, right? But Kick also has a program that if you meet a bunch of certain criteria, yes, a bunch of certain criteria. Boy, I am grammaring well this morning. But if you hit this criteria, you can be part of the KCIP, the Kick Creator Incentive Program, I think is what it is, where basically they pay you an hourly rate to stream exclusively on Kick. Okay, awesome. Between that and Kick's much higher payout, a lot of streamers around the world are abandoning Twitch because they are just not getting the ad revenue that would make up for the difference in payout amounts. The cash just isn't there. So Twitch has definitely fallen off. And there have been a few places, I think they completely dropped service in Korea. Though that was in part because Korea, in all of their wisdom, started charging a ridiculous amount of money for for streamers and bandwidth in Korea. Just didn't make financial sense for Twitch anymore. And there are large swaths of the world, at the spots like Eastern Europe, Latin America, where Twitch is just scrambling to do anything because they're just the ad revenue is not there. So as a streamer, right, you're looking out for your own self, which is sort of a good thing, right? Streamers are looking at their revenue and said, look, I'm not getting ad revenue. Twitch's payouts suck compared to everybody else. So I'm going to go to somebody else. And a lot of them are going to Kick. Some are going to YouTube. Some are probably going elsewhere. But, all right, but that's going down. But is live streaming as a whole growing? I think for the moment, yes. Now, it really took off with COVID, right? Because everyone's at home and has nothing else to do. Which might be the other reason Twitch's overall viewership is going down. I know it's definitely part of it. Because you look at the graphs and you see that huge bump. 2020, here's COVID. Everybody's now watching streams. And because, again, we all got locked in our homes, basically, right? So what do? Well, that hasn't been a thing for a while. And people's habits are starting to revert back to what they were pre-COVID, where it's like, hey, I can go hang out with friends. I can go to a live show. I can go watch this game. I can go hiking. I can do all this other stuff that's not watching Twitch. So yeah, so their numbers have been going down because of that. But even without the COVID bump, so Twitch's numbers happen to be down. But, and that's the thing, it's a but. I think live gaming streams overall are at least flat or going up a little bit. But you've got lots of other live content coming to Twitch and to YouTube and to Kick, right? And, obviously other platforms as well. And, there are a lot of places, said podcasts have never been more popular. A lot of those are starting as live streams somewhere else. And as I was thinking about this over the last, week or so, it's like, this has been my thought is that part of the reason these live performances are growing is because they are live and tangible. I can watch, so I watch a lot of Minecraft streamers, people whose videos I watch on YouTube, but there's a difference watching them on stream versus YouTube, okay? Because on YouTube, you get this whole, here's a little bit of the starting process of a build, and then maybe you get a time lapse or a montage, and now here's the build, and great. And maybe there's some fun stuff that happens with other people that gets included in the video. But when you watch live, there's all sorts of crazy stuff that happens. Partly, I like watching it because you get to see the build process, and you can see how much time it actually takes to build some of these awesome Minecraft builds. But in the case of something like Hermitcraft or an SMP like Minecraft, or just any of those, you get the fun interactions with the other people on the server, right? It's one of the reasons I love watching Hermitcraft streams in particular, right? Yeah, you get the fun stuff that happens on stream and just the weirdness of, oh, hey, chat said something cool. We have to go do that now, and it's just fun. Or somebody else on the server shows up and they get talking or something else, and it's just funny, right? And that's stuff that just doesn't end up in the videos as often. And the other nice thing about streaming is there's at least a little bit of interaction with the streamer. Yeah, if you've got 1,000 people in chat, you're not going to have a back and forth with everybody, but there is some interaction with chat. And so I think you get a little bit more of it feels more personal, okay? Now, yes, I know there have been attempts to do live streaming with AI hosts. I haven't seen those. I think the ones I've heard about that are in Chinese anyway, so I couldn't tell you much about them other than, yep, AI is pretty good at doing a video of a person these days. Okay. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing to think about as more and more random content just becomes generative AI produced. Are we going to see a push away from those types of sites, right? Sora, which is basically it's TikTok with just AI stuff, right? I'm not sure how well that's going to go. People watch YouTube Shorts, or they'll watch Instagram Reels, or they'll watch TikTok, and so much of the feed is filling up with AI slop that I think there really is a move away from that to try to find something that just is real. So I think it's going to be an interesting thing, really, as in some ways the pendulum is sliding back, right? We've moved away from live everything because, hey, I can stream it. I can watch on my schedule, and that I don't think is going away. But the idea of, hey, let's watch something, let's experience something that really is real, really is happening now, or at least was happening live, and I can go back and watch the VOD, right? But it was, I can tell that this wasn't some just hyper AI generated nonsense. It really is something that happened. And it's going to be interesting to see as things slide back and forth along this. Now, maybe is it just a big fat dose of cope? I don't know. Right? But I really do think it's people are going to be and are tuning into live performances, whether it's in person or online, because there is a tangible connection to something real. So let me know what you think. As I know, said I'm totally. I've definitely seen some AI stuff. It's like, okay, that's really cool, and other things, it's like, really, really. But I'm curious. What do you think? Are you turning into live stuff? Are you tuning into live performances more than you have in the past? And what draws you to them? Let me know. Drop a comment on YouTube or on Spotify, and let me know what you think. On that note, we'll go ahead and end it. Of course, you can find Music Free Static anywhere podcasts are sold, or go to musicfreestatic.com where you can get the RSS feed if you want to just, go direct. And until next time, be excellent to each other. And this is Music Free Static signing off.